The fear of being alone is one of the most powerful and universal experiences woven into the fabric of human existence. It is not merely about the absence of people around us, it is the confrontation with ourselves, stripped of distractions, masks, and roles. To be alone means to meet the raw truth of our own thoughts, desires, and vulnerabilities. And for many, that encounter feels unbearable. We are conditioned, both by evolution and by culture, to seek others, to bond, to find safety in the collective. To stand apart seems to trigger an alarm in the mind, an ancient signal that whispers danger, abandonment, rejection. Yet in reality, solitude need not be a threat. The fear of it is often a learned illusion, perpetuated by the noise of modern life. When one is left in silence, the absence of constant stimulation can feel oppressive. The phone is quiet, the room is still, and suddenly the mind begins to speak with an intensity we often avoid. Memories resurface, insecurities magnify, doubts creep in. Without anyone to reassure us or distract us, the inner voice can turn harsh, reminding us of failures, mistakes, or the possibility that we are not enough. This is why people flee from solitude into endless activity, scrolling through social media, filling calendars with obligations, clinging to shallow conversations, anything to avoid the confrontation with that voice. The fear of being alone is, at its core, the fear of meeting ourselves without filters. Society intensifies this fear. In an age of hyperconnectivity, solitude is framed almost as a deficiency. If you are alone on a Friday night, it implies rejection. If you travel alone, people wonder if you have no one to share life with. Social media reinforces the solution by displaying curated images of togetherness, celebration, and constant activity. The message is subtle but relentless. To be alone is to be left behind. This collective narrative is dangerous because it blinds us to the value of solitude. It tricks us into believing that self-worth comes only from being validated by others, from being visible, from being in demand. Yet, paradoxically, it is precisely the ability to be alone without fear that gives rise to the strongest, most unshakable individuals. The one who cannot endure solitude is dependent, vulnerable to manipulation, and easily swayed by the opinions of others. The one who embraces solitude, however, becomes sovereign. They find strength not in constant approval, but in self-awareness. They learn to listen to their own intuition, to trust their own instincts, to cultivate an inner life that cannot be touched by external judgment. Solitude, once feared, becomes a crucible in which resilience and authenticity are forged. But the transition from fear to acceptance is not instantaneous. It requires patience and practice. At first, solitude may feel unbearable. The silence might feel heavy, the lack of distraction might seem suffocating. Yet, if one resists the impulse to escape and instead stays present, something begins to shift. The mind, after its initial restlessness, starts to settle. Thoughts become clearer, a deeper voice emerges, one that is not driven by fear but by truth. In that stillness, creativity awakens, clarity sharpens, and a sense of wholeness begins to unfold. What was once terrifying emptiness transforms into fertile ground. It is also important to recognize that solitude does not mean isolation. Fear of being alone often arises from confusing the two. Isolation is imposed, solitude is chosen. Isolation drains the spirit, while solitude restores it. The fear dissolves when we realize that solitude is not a punishment, but a privilege, a space where we can reconnect with ourselves without interruption. Once this distinction is understood, solitude becomes less of an enemy and more of an ally. The fear of being alone is deeply human, but it is not unbreakable. By facing it head-on, we discover that what we truly feared was not solitude itself, but the truths we might uncover in silence. And yet, those truths are the very key to growth, freedom, and authenticity. To overcome this fear is to step into sovereignty, to no longer depend on the noise of the world to feel alive, but to carry a sense of completeness within. In the end, solitude reveals itself as not emptiness, but fullness. The fullness of our own presence, our own power, and our own potential. Silence is often misunderstood. In a world where noise has become the backdrop of everyday life, silence can feel uncomfortable, even threatening. Many people seek to drown it out with constant distractions, music, social media, endless conversations, background television, because silence does something that noise never does. It forces us to meet ourselves. This confrontation, though simple, is one of the most profound experiences a human being can have. When all external chatter fades, silence becomes a mirror. It reflects back to us the truth we often hide behind the noise. In silence, the masks we wear for the world begin to slip, and the layers of roles, expectations, and performances peel away. Without the feedback of others, without the judgments or validations of society, what is left is only you. And in that reflection, there are things we may not always want to see. Our fears, insecurities, doubts, or even the vast emptiness we have carefully avoided. But within this same reflection lies the seed of self-discovery. Silence creates space for awareness. In the absence of distraction, thoughts emerge more clearly. The patterns of the mind, usually blurred by constant stimulation, stand out with precision. You begin to notice what keeps returning to you, the worries that never truly go away, the desires that feel deeper than fleeting impulses. Silence, then, is not emptiness at all, it is clarity. It shows you not just the noise outside, but the noise inside. And it gives you the chance to ask, is this who I am? Or is this who I've been conditioned to be? This mirror of silence is not always flattering. It can show us how much of our life has been dictated by the opinions of others. It can reveal the compromises we have made, the truths we have avoided, and the ways in which we've betrayed ourselves for comfort or acceptance. This is why many people resist solitude. It strips away illusions. But precisely because of that, silence is also liberating. It gives us a chance to rebuild from an authentic foundation, rather than a borrowed one. Great thinkers, artists, and leaders have always understood the power of silence. It is in silence that vision crystallizes. Without the clamor of competing voices, your own inner voice becomes audible. That voice is not loud, nor is it demanding. It is subtle, often drowned out by the world's chaos, but in silence it becomes unmistakable. This voice is the compass that points toward your true path. When you hear it, you realize that much of the noise you once thought was necessary was nothing but distraction keeping you from yourself. Silence also teaches patience. In the modern world, speed is worshipped. We rush to respond, to act, to achieve. But silence slows everything down, not to weaken us, but to strengthen us. It allows us to observe before reacting, to listen before speaking, to understand before judging. It trains us to live deliberately rather than reflexively. This patience becomes a form of power because those who are not controlled by urgency are free to act with intention. At first, silence may feel uncomfortable, even unbearable. The mind rebels against the lack of stimulation. Restlessness grows. An impulse arises to escape by checking a phone, turning on music, or seeking another distraction. But if you endure this discomfort, something shifts. The restlessness quiets, the anxiety dissolves, and a new state of presence emerges. You begin to feel more alive, more aware, more in tune with the subtleties of existence. The silence that once felt suffocating becomes spacious and alive like air for the soul. In this mirror of silence, creativity flourishes. The greatest ideas are rarely born in noise. They come in stillness, in the gaps between thoughts, in the spaces where the mind is not occupied with external input. Silence opens doors that noise keeps closed. It is no coincidence that spiritual traditions across the world emphasize meditation, contemplation, and retreat into silence as pathways to truth. Silence does not add anything new to you. It simply clears away what is false so that what is real can emerge. Yet silence is not only about solitude. It can also transform the way we relate to others. When you're comfortable with silence, you are no longer compelled to fill every pause with words. You learn to listen deeply, to hold space for others without rushing to respond. This presence is rare and powerful. In a world addicted to talking, the one who can sit calmly in silence carries an undeniable authority. Ultimately, silence as a mirror is an invitation. It invites you to stop running, to stop hiding, to stop drowning yourself in the comfort of noise. It invites you to look directly into the depths of who you are and to accept what you find there. Not everything in that reflection will be easy to face, but it is only by facing it that transformation can occur. The person who learns to embrace silence learns to embrace themselves. And this is perhaps the greatest gift of silence. It reminds us that we are not defined by the voices of others, nor by the constant stimuli of the world. We are defined by the inner core that only reveals itself when the noise falls away. Silence, far from being emptiness, is the canvas upon which our truest self can finally appear.
Solitude is often portrayed as emptiness, a void where companionship and comfort should be. To many, it feels like an absence of connection, of validation, of meaning. Yet, when seen through another lens, solitude reveals itself not as absence, but as a hidden source of energy, a reservoir of strength waiting to be tapped. It is not isolation that weakens us, but the failure to recognize the deep vitality that solitude can awaken. When the noise of the world quiets and distractions fall away, the first thing that rises is discomfort. The human mind is accustomed to constant stimulation, conversations, notifications, obligations, demands. Without them, the silence can feel overwhelming. Restlessness surfaces, and in that restlessness come old fears, doubts, and insecurities. Yet, this discomfort is not the enemy. It is the initiation. Solitude strips away the masks we wear for others and forces us to confront the self that exists when no one else is watching. Beneath that confrontation lies untapped energy. The hidden energy of solitude reveals itself in creativity. In moments alone, the mind is free to wander without judgment or interruption. Ideas take shape, connections emerge, visions form. The greatest inventors, writers, artists, and philosophers sought solitude not because they wished to abandon the world, but because they wished to see it more clearly. Without the constant chatter of outside voices, imagination is given room to breathe. In this space, the energy of solitude transforms into innovation and insight. There is also a profound physical energy released in solitude. When freed from the subtle pressures of performance, of meeting expectations, of adjusting to others' rhythms, the body relaxes. Breathing slows, the nervous system shifts out of survival mode, and vitality returns. Solitude is not merely a psychological phenomenon. It is a physiological reset. It restores balance, replenishes energy, and grounds us back into our natural state of being. But perhaps the greatest power of solitude lies in its ability to build resilience. Life inevitably brings conflict, loss, and hardship. To meet these challenges requires an anchor that cannot be built in chaos. Solitude trains us to sit with discomfort, to face the unknown without panic, to endure without constant reassurance. It is in solitude that one learns to transform emptiness into endurance and silence into strength. A person who has faced themselves in solitude carries a reservoir of inner stability that no external circumstance can easily shake. The energy of solitude is also spiritual. In the quiet, when external voices fade, one can begin to sense something deeper, the pulse of life itself, the essence of being that lies beneath all thought and identity. This is not about religion, but about direct experience. Solitude reveals that the strength we seek in the world is already within us. It teaches that peace is not found in escape, but in presence, and that power is not borrowed from others, but awakened from within. To embrace solitude is to uncover a hidden source of fuel for every aspect of life. Creativity flows more freely, the body heals more deeply, resilience hardens more firmly, and spiritual connection deepens more profoundly. What the world sees as emptiness is, in truth, abundance. It is not a void to be feared, but a well of energy to be drawn from. The challenge is to move past the fear of silence and the reflex to fill every moment with noise. In learning to be alone, we discover that we are never truly without. Solitude does not strip us of power, it gives it back. It recharges the spirit, strengthens the will, and reveals a self that is vast, capable, and unshakable. The hidden energy of solitude waits for anyone willing to step into the quiet. It is not an easy path, few things that transform us ever are, but it is a path of immense reward. In the silence, the true self emerges. In the stillness, vitality returns. And in the solitude, one discovers not absence, but the most potent presence of all, the untapped force within.
The world today is a storm of noise. From the moment we open our eyes, we are met with an endless stream of stimuli, messages, advertisements, updates, alarms, chatter, opinions. Every sound, every notification, every headline demands attention. The human mind, already delicate and impressionable, becomes saturated with voices that are not its own. In this cacophony, it is easy to forget what our own thoughts sound like. The greatest danger of external noise is not simply distraction, but the slow erosion of our inner voice until we begin to mistake the world's echo for our own truth. Breaking free from external noise is not about escaping society or renouncing modern life. It is about reclaiming sovereignty over our attention. Attention is the currency of power, and wherever our attention flows, energy follows. Noise is designed to hijack this attention, to keep us hooked, reactive, and dependent. The more we surrender to it, the weaker our ability to act with clarity and intention. To break free is to resist being consumed by noise and to carve out spaces where our thoughts can breathe without intrusion. The first step in breaking free is awareness. Many people live in constant noise without even realizing it. The radio hums while driving, the television drones in the background, the phone vibrates with notifications, and the mind rarely experiences true silence. By noticing how much external noise occupies our daily life, we begin to understand its grip on us. With awareness comes choice. Do we continue to let noise dictate the rhythm of our minds, or do we begin to reclaim that rhythm for ourselves? Creating silence requires courage. For many, silence feels uncomfortable, even threatening. In the absence of noise, the mind surfaces with questions, doubts, and unresolved emotions. This is why so many avoid stillness. It forces us to meet ourselves. But hidden within that discomfort is liberation. Noise drowns out the parts of us that seek attention, while silence brings them into focus.
By facing them, we transform them. Silence is not emptiness. It is a mirror reflecting everything we need to see. There are practical ways to reduce noise and reclaim inner space. Digital detoxes, even for a few hours, allow the nervous system to reset. Walking without headphones or sitting in nature without distractions reconnects us to rhythms older than human voices. Journaling captures the thoughts buried beneath the flood of external input, giving shape to ideas that might otherwise be lost. Meditation, with its simple act of sitting and breathing, trains the mind to rest in presence rather than chase the next sound or signal. These practices are not escapes from reality, but pathways back into it, clearer and stronger. As we create distance from noise, a new kind of listening emerges. We begin to hear the subtler signals that noise once drowned out, the intuition that guides decisions, the creative spark that births new visions, the emotional truths that demand acknowledgement. Breaking free from external noise does not silence the world, it amplifies the inner compass. It teaches us to discern which voices matter and which are simply distractions designed to pull us away from ourselves. There is also power in reintroducing intentional sound once silence has been cultivated. Music, poetry, conversation. All of these regain their richness when experienced against the backdrop of quiet. Noise no longer dominates, but complements. Instead of consuming us, sound becomes nourishment, chosen consciously rather than absorbed unconsciously. By breaking free, we do not exile ourselves from the world, we learn to engage with it on our own terms. The ability to resist noise is a form of strength few cultivate. In a world that profits from attention, silence becomes rebellion. The one who can remain calm amidst the clamor, who can think independently in the presence of countless voices, possesses an unshakable power. They cannot be manipulated by the latest trend, pressured by popular opinion, or swayed by manufactured urgency. They act not out of reaction, but out of intention. They are no longer owned by the noise, they own themselves. Breaking free from external noise is not a one-time act, but a lifelong discipline. The world will always be loud, always demand more, always try to invade the quiet places of the mind. But those who cultivate silence within themselves carry a refuge wherever they go. The storms may rage outside, but inside remain steady. From this steadiness comes clarity, and from clarity comes true freedom. To live free is not to silence the world, but no longer let the world silence you. In the quiet, your voice is rediscovered. In the stillness, your strength is renewed. And in the spaces free from noise, you finally remember who you are.
Solitude, when misunderstood, feels like a barren desert, empty, lifeless, and inhospitable. Many resist it, fearing that time alone means weakness, rejection, or abandonment. Yet beneath this surface perception lies one of the most powerful truths. Solitude is not a prison, but a forge. It is the crucible where raw existence is refined into strength, clarity, and unshakable confidence. To turn solitude into power is to recognize it not as absence, but as presence in its purest form. The first transformation comes from the shift in perspective. Most people experience solitude passively. They endure it, waiting for it to end. But when solitude is embraced with intention, it changes from emptiness to opportunity. Suddenly, the quiet is no longer suffocating. It becomes spacious. The stillness is no longer threatening. It becomes fertile. Power emerges in that shift because the individual no longer depends on external validation for a sense of worth. Instead, the energy of self-sufficiency begins to take root. Turning solitude into power also requires the courage to face the self without distraction. It is in these moments that the noise of the world fades and the voice within becomes audible. For many, this inner voice carries uncomfortable truths, regrets, insecurities, unrealized desires.
But hidden within those truths is also immense clarity. To listen is to see the raw material of one's life, to confront it, and to begin shaping it with deliberate hands. This act of honest self-encounter is the foundation of all true power. For a person who knows themselves cannot be easily deceived, manipulated, or broken. Another dimension of solitude's power is the way it sharpens focus. In the world's constant pull for attention, energy scatters across trivial pursuits. But in solitude, distractions fall away. The mind, once fragmented, regathers its strength. Ideas begin to crystallize, priorities align, and goals sharpen. What once seemed impossible becomes manageable, because mental energy is no longer leaking into 1,000 competing demands. This clarity of focus, cultivated in solitude, translates into decisive action in the world. Solitude also grants mastery over emotional strength. When one learns to sit with loneliness without fleeing, the fear of being alone dissolves. This builds resilience that extends into every aspect of life. Relationships become healthier because they are no longer based on dependency, but on choice. Challenges lose their edge because one knows they can face them without constant support. The individual who draws power from solitude carries an inner anchor, steady in storms that would otherwise overwhelm. The creative force of solitude cannot be overlooked. History is filled with examples of visionaries who withdrew into solitude to tap into wells of imagination and insight inaccessible in the noise of daily life. From writers and artists to leaders and innovators, solitude has served as a catalyst for groundbreaking thought. This creative energy arises not because solitude provides answers, but because it makes space for the mind to connect dots it could not see in chaos. In this sense, solitude becomes the birthplace of originality. The most profound power solitude offers is the discovery of freedom. When external approval no longer dictates self-worth, when silence no longer frightens, when stillness feels like strength rather than weakness, a new kind of autonomy arises. This is not the hollow independence of detachment, but the full-bodied freedom of presence. It is the freedom to act not from fear or conformity, but from authenticity. Solitude teaches that one does not need to be carried by the crowd to walk with purpose. To turn solitude into power is not to escape the world, but to re-enter it stronger. It is not withdrawal, but preparation. Every moment spent in intentional solitude is an investment in inner strength, clarity, and freedom. The world may still demand, distract, and challenge, but the one who has forged themselves in solitude meets it with unshakable presence. They do not bend easily. They do not break quickly. They are grounded in a wellspring of energy that cannot be taken away. What once seemed like emptiness is revealed as abundance. What once felt like weakness becomes strength. Solitude, embraced fully, becomes a source of limitless power, not because it changes the world outside, but because it transforms the one within.